Hi, Miss Phillips. How you doing?
I am doing well, Judge.
Good, good. Everybody getting on.
Hey, Dr. Osgood, Senator.
Senator Osgood, how you doing? Judge Rabolo, change your name.
Good morning, guys. I'm actually the case manager. Judge Robolo is out, so Judge Williams will be covering.
Oh, okay. That's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, family.
Good evening. Come on in. The water's fine. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're just waiting for everybody to get in. And Dr. Wanza, if you could alert the chief and the doctor that they're like number 2 on the agenda. So
I
if they
certainly will.
So if they could just get into at least the attendee side and
So, I think one of them may be coming in now under my name. See the second one? The second thing that's my name?
yeah, I don't see.
Maybe they went off.
Okay.
On the other side.
I think that may be the second one under my name.
All right, let's see. Let's see, Dr. Wanza. Okay, I don't see them, but just let me know if they notify you that they're on, and I'll put them over on the panelist side.
So they're in the
Okay,
chat.
okay. Somebody just John Burbridge.
In the chat, yeah.
Okay. All right, he's here. So let me see if I can move him over real quick.
But
Is
I
he
think
over?
I think it's the
Other
second
side.
one under my name because I have two panels.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Ask him to do the public. That way he'll have a name under, or either change the name. Because
Okay.
your link was germane to you.
Okay, all right, let me
He's on
tell
the
them.
second attendee, though. He's on the other side.
Okay, so if he's on the attendee side, I'll find him and I'll
Okay.
bring him over. But let's get started, and then I'll start doing the. Okay, I see John Burbridge. I'm going to move him. Okay, to the panelist side.
Okay, that's
I don't-
Craig Kowalski.
Hey.
With
Can-
Matt, so change.
Hear me okay?
All right, if they would just use the public link, and then that way I can bring them over under
Okay,
their
Craig.
real name.
Yeah.
Not
Can
the
you come out
AKA.
of that link and use the public link that I text you?
Text me.
Uh-huh,
All
all right.
You want us to learn technology?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye.
Because there can only be one imposter here today, and that would be
Gotcha.
me. Good afternoon, everyone. I am not Marsha A. Ellison. I was just telling Ms. Phillips I'm a cheap imitation. President or Chair Ellison is in a meeting right now. She's a national officer for the NAACP, and she is attending that meeting. She's going to try to pop on as soon as she's done. But she asked me in the interim so that we wouldn't have to cancel this meeting today because we have important information to be shared. That if I would just go on and chair. So if there's no objection to my chairing in her absence until she can join us. And then if anybody raises their hand, I'm sending Colonel Holmes out to get them. I'll give you probable cause. But at this time, if you would unmute and introduce yourselves and briefly who you represent. And you can start, and anybody can start. And for the record, we have Roosevelt Walters. Mr. Walters is very happy to have you here. How are you feeling today?
Madam Chair, let me just say I'm on top. I'm sucking air. I'm being seen and not viewed, so I'm happy.
I'm happy too. Well, okay, Mr. Walters is here. Okay, who wants to start off?
I start off Colonel David Holmes. I'm with the Broward County Sheriff's Office.
The other guy's faith community.
Michael Bell Community Organization, Community-Based Connections.
Gordon Weeks, Public Defender's Office.
Better Head, Broward County Schools.
Elijah Williams, Circuit Judge, standing in for Judge Carlos Fribolo. He's a little bit under the weather.
John Burbridge, Broward County Public Schools, Safety and Security.
Watkins, Broward County Schools.
Valerie Wanza, Broward Schools.
Ella Phillips, BJJ Advisory.
Michael Walker, Broward Schools.
Yolanda Brown, Court Administration and Community.
Good afternoon, everyone. John James, Broward County Public Defender's Office.
Major Victor, Colorado Police Department.
Good afternoon, Cassandra Evans, Florida Department of Juvenile Justice.
Good afternoon, Johnny Sanders, Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, Office of Prevention Services.
And I got Gloria Mashala. Miss Mashala, I'm getting ready to bring you back over to the panelist side. So hopefully that worked. My technology prowess is on display big time this afternoon. I'm not all that techno, but I'm learning.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Gloria Moschella on behalf of the State Attorney's Office.
All right. And Dr. Wanza has I know he's got his last name begins with a K.
Kowalski. K-O-W.
Is he on? I don't see him yet. But if you'll just give me a heads up that he's on, I don't see him on the attendee side. So
Judge, I think you also think you got the commissioner over on the attendee side as well.
Okay, I'm promoting him now. I love promoting people. It just does things for me. Okay. All right, if anybody that should be on this panel is on the attendee side, just let me know and I will bring them over because I have the attendance sheet that Chair Ellison uses. All right, so Commissioner, we're in the introductory phase. If you'll introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Judge, the Honorable and Madam Chair, Acting Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Tori Alston, representing Broward County.
All right. And I've got Marva Preston coming on. Who is Marva Preston? All right, well, we'll get underway. I did want to offer you all an apology. I was away teaching last month's board meeting, but President Ellison, she had me like, where's Waldo? She was saying, I was actually in San Diego teaching judges from all over this nation. So I had fun, but I'm glad to be home. All right, we have the newly elected Senator Osgood. If you wish to introduce yourself.
Good evening, family. Dr. Rosalind Osgood, newly elected Senator for District 33.
All right. I still have a person, Marva Preston. Anybody know Marva Preston? Okay, then I'm going to move that person to the attendee side. And because I only want our panelists to be present at this time. So let me get to the Ms. Preston, whoever that is.
Madam Chair, Chief Kowalski is on the attendee side.
Okay, I'm going over to okay. All right. Anybody know who Marva Preston is before I remove the person? Okay, I'll put her on the attendee side.
Can you hear me now?
Is that Miss Preston?
Yes, ma'am, it is. I'm Margaret Preston, Director with the Department of Juvenile Justice, and I
Oh,
received an
okay.
invitation to attend this meeting.
Well, I'm glad you're here. So if I move you, I'll bring you back. I promise you. But I'm quick on removing folks.
I got it, not a problem. I'm actually driving, so I'm just listening. So
Oh, okay.
thank you so much.
Not
Yes,
a
ma'am.
problem. And so there's one more person that I'm supposed to be moving, and that is Chief
Fran Kowalski.
Kowalski.
He's on the attendee side. I see him. All right. He has now been promoted with no pay. All right, Chief, are you there? If you could unmute and tell us your name, because I'm probably mispronouncing it.
Oh, you're good. Craig Kowalski with the Broward Schools, Chief of the Special Investigative Unit.
Okay.
And I'm Dr. Osgood. Nice to see you.
All right. All right. I'm going to go over the norms as we call them. First and foremost, I'm going to ask that you put your cell phones on vibrate or turn them off if you can't figure out how to put them on vibrate. Please raise your hands. There is a raise hand function. Ms. Hudge, you have your hand up. So
yes, I apologize, Madam Chair, but one of the staff members from the school board is in the waiting room, Mike Walker. He's in the other room.
I thought because I kept asking who was Walker, and I think I moved him.
Sorry.
Not a problem.
Thank you so much.
Okay, is that person going to present or is just attending as a staff member?
Yes, ma'am, he is going to present.
Okay, let me see if I can find him. Michael Walker. Okay, Mr. Walker, you should be able to hear us and we should be able to see you at this point on the panelist side. Mr. Walker, are you there? Okay, there he is. I see him. And he already spoke. I didn't move him. All right. As I was saying, please raise your hands as you saw Ms. Hudge do. There is a raise hand function, but even if you can't, if you just, like for instance, if you're on the phone, Mr. Walters is on the phone. So Mr. Walters, if you need to be heard, just call me and I'll make sure that your voice is heard during this meeting. Also, each person has a maximum of 3 minutes to speak on any topic that you so desire to chime in on. Also, please respect all of the opinions and viewpoints of the others. You may disagree, and that's fine. That's what boards are all about, but please remain respectful. And the chair doesn't do this because she doesn't really need to, but I am. Colonel Holmes, I'm going to nominate you for the purposes of this meeting and limited purposes as the Sergeant at Arms. So, you just rough them up, take them out for a minute. And then please address all other board members and especially our guests respectfully. So I'll do that. The last meeting that we, for this board, a number of things came up. And so we want to try to address them. Mr. Weeks, I'm going to ask for your assistance because you did the most inquiry with regard to agenda items 1 and 2, where we talked about what school-based arrests are and how many are occurring. And Dr. Wanza, I know you're going to chime in on that also, and then introduce anyone that you have invited to address that item. And then we'll just we'll segue right into the metal detectors, the wanding aspect. I think it's in a pilot stage now, but there were 4 schools that were named, and so we'd like to get an update on that. So Mr. Weeks, if you want to begin the discussion for school-based arrests and then the metal detectors or the wands that are being used.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would defer to the school board's presentation first. So we all have an overview, and then I can, or any of us can then ask any questions for clarification. I don't want to presuppose that they're not going to be very thorough.
Okay, all right. I just didn't want to leave you out, Mr. Public Defender. All right, Dr. Wanza, you know who's here. You were heard, and you along actually with Chief Evans. You all were heard about what is determined to be a school-based arrest, and then the use of those, wands at, I think it was Plantation High, was one of the schools. So I wrote it down. We got Silver Trails Middle, Plantation High, Northeast High, and Piper High School. So Dr. Wanza, who do you want to start first?
So I would, so first off, good afternoon, everyone. In keeping with what's on the agenda, the student arrest data, student discipline data, that's all managed and administered through the Student Support Initiatives and Recovery Division. And the task assigned chief is here, Ms. Hudge, and her team. Obviously, Mr. Watkins, works in her division. So it's only fitting that she walks us through this agenda item.
Ms. Hudge, if you'll unmute, and good afternoon, welcome. You're muted. You're muted.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair and Dr. Wanza. I'm Betta Hudge. I'm the task assigned chief for student support services and initiatives and recovery for Broward County Schools, and it's my pleasure and honor to come this afternoon to share with you the arrest data. I'm going to ask Mr. Walker, who is our Director of School Climate and Discipline, if he would actually present the overall data. As he's presenting or putting up the data sheet, I will just say to the group that, again, it's an honor to be here today. I've been with the district for 31 years in various capacities. My most recent one was with Dr. Wanza as her Chief of Service Quality, dealing with accreditation for the district as well as parent concerns, reassignments, and choice, to name a few, and working with some of our most struggling schools. So it is going to be my pleasure to work with you and continue the work that we've been doing collectively with the group. So with that said, Mr. Walker, if you would bring up the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will, if you just bear with me one moment, I'm going to, it says I need screen sharing permissions.
You do, what are you going to share with us?
The arrest data.
All right. Let me see. I can get you on there. Okay. But I thought I granted it. Did it come through? I'm using the chair's Zoom and not mine. But I thought
Whoever, usually whoever created it needs to. Yeah, it's not working.
No, it's not working. Let me see if this. All right, see if that works. Is it working?
Yes, yes.
Gotcha.
Let's see. One moment, please.
All right, take your time.
Let's see. Let's see if this is it. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So if you look at the screen before you, we have created a graph to represent the school arrest data as recorded by our school-based administrators. So what that means is basically the arrest data that we're sharing with you over the last 4 years is when a student was at our school site and a school-based administrator went into our discipline management system and recorded this as an arrest or what you see before you. So we have a bar graph for the 2018-19, 19-20, 2021, and 21-22, our current school year. So with most of the data that we've been looking at over the past year, obviously we're trying to get comparable data. So we look back to the 18-19 school year, our last full school year that was non-pandemic, so that it could be comparable to this school year. And if you look at the chart, you can see the data here. So far this school year, we have approximately 338 arrests, if you count arrests or arrest non-custodial. And you see, in addition, there's 74 civil citations that were given at the school, equaling 412. If you look at, so 190, 148 equals 338, going back to the pre-pandemic year of 2019, at the end of the school year, adding up the arrests, there was about 425 arrests. Scrolling further down, we can see the breakdown, the racial breakdown of arrests within the school. And the first column, you can see that there is, for the 2022 school year, a raise in the Black subgroup. Hispanic, there is, it looks like we may end up a little ahead on that one as well. There might be a slight uptick in each category, whether it's Black, Hispanic, other, or white. So with the white subgroup, that's white, non-Hispanic. And then of course we have Hispanic and Black. So you can see here we're at 255 in the Black subgroup, which does comprise our largest population within the district. However, there is an increase, as you see. On the next 2 pages or 3 pages, we have it broken down over the last 4 school years by individual schools. So this goes all the way through every school in our district. So typically the largest number of arrests at the school sites are at the high schools. So it's kind of difficult to scroll through all of this, but this is the individual school report as well. I can stop wherever you would like, or if you guys have any questions.
First of all, Mr. Walker, is it possible to get a copy of this to the chair?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so Ms. Hudge, you'll be responsible to email what's being shared on the screen to Chair Ellison?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, excellent. All right, and I'll open the floor. Mr. Walker says if you have any questions, he will pause now. If you have any questions.
Madam Chair, if I may.
You may, Mr. Weeks.
I see that your data starts for the school year 2018 through 2019, correct?
Yes.
That, just so we have a frame of reference, that was the Parkland incident occurred in 2018. Is that right?
Yes, that would be February of 2018.
So this data is only post-Parkland data?
Yes.
The reason I raised that issue for the body is because there was significant work done prior to Parkland through the Promise program to address this very category of individuals that we're looking at now. And without having a reference point of what the numbers were before Parkland, it may be somewhat skewed looking at those numbers after Parkland. Even though there is a clear uptick when it comes to racial disparities as opposed to 2019 to 2022, it probably will be more telling looking at a snapshot before Parkland and then looking at a snapshot after Parkland and looking at that comparison. I also note that these numbers are also additionally skewed because of the pandemic. You have a whole year where you lost some data. So I put that into, I asked that question and put that into the atmosphere so we can consume it and get a good feed for what we're having. Even though this is problematic as presented, it may be more problematic if you look at a comparison to pre-Parkland numbers.
Yes, and also the 2020 year, that school year pretty much ended in March as well. So these 2 years are, missing days because of the pandemic.
So that is.
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
on, Coach. I was going to ask, so because of the request and it is misleading, for lack of a better term, not to do pre-Parkland in 2018. So we have some, you were kind of overlapping. You said 2018, 2019 at the top of the page. Is it possible to rework that to show, what the numbers were prior to February
Yes.
2018?
So thank you for that, Madam Chair. That's exactly what I was going to share with Mr. Weeks, that's something that we can go back and forth.
Mr. Weeks, does that satisfy you? And again, can that be forwarded? If you want Ms. Hudge to make sure you get copies of these, if you put your email address in the chat, as most people are now doing, and that way she can just send out like one group email. So Senator Osgood, we've seen your email address in the chat. And I think or Chief Evans, you've asked for copies to be emailed to you. Is that correct? Okay, hearing nothing. Mr. Weeks, were you done? Then I see Dr. Osgood's hand up.
I will defer to Dr. Osgood. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Osgood, questions for Mr. Walker?
Not a question, but a comment. I think it's important when we request data from the school system that we ask if they could go a step further and break out the charter school data from the traditional public school data. For example, when the district reports a graduation rate of 86 or 80-something%, if you take the charter school data out and analyze it on its own, and the district's graduation rates changes to about 92 or 93%. And the reason why I think that's important is because we want to support all of our schools, but charter schools are not governed by the same governing body as the traditional public schools. So when we have the data together, it does not give us the microscopic view of what's going on with our public schools, whether they're traditional public schools or they're public charter schools. And if we're going to continue to do this work to address disparities and implement programs like Promise and Civil Citation, which Civil Citation is on the uptick according to this data, I think it's fair, or it's more accurate if we look at the data. And then as we're looking at arrest data, I don't know how we can look at school board arrest data without automatically including Promise data, because that's how we do the true measurement to see how, if the Promise program is being used for the purpose that it was designed and created for, and how that reflects in the data that we're analyzing. So the data separated out by charter schools, and also the same years of data for the Promise program. That gives us a complete picture of what we're trying to measure in this group as far as the Promise program being an intervention to help students not end up, being arrested. So I think we have to look at all of that together. Thank you.
All right, so is that feasible, Mr. Walker, Ms. Hudge, to get, this, not only what you have here and showing the board today, but also to do those breakouts as Senator Osgood has requested?
Yes, we will get with our IT department to see how they can break this information up. And Dr. Osgood, it's always a pleasure seeing you and hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Walker, were you done with the charts that you have up on the screen?
Yes, I can stop sharing unless anyone else has any other questions.
Any other
I do have another one, Judge Holmes, if I can. I'm sorry, I was trying to keep you from moving. Could you roll down to the schools, please? And stop on the first one. I saw a couple of, right there, it's fine. I saw a couple of numbers that just kind of jumped out at me when I looked at like Cooper City, I looked at Boyd Anderson. I think as we look at schools, we will see some trends. Could you go down to the next sheet, please? Keep going, stop there. Go back up a little.
Go up to the 27. Yeah, that's what caught my attention, Hollywood Hills.
Okay. Keep going, go down again. And I think as we're looking at schools, in order to be fair with the schools, I think the population of the schools is important. If I'm in a school with 1,000 students and then there's a school with 3,000 students, the fact that I have more students in that school could or could not impact my data. But I think it's important that we look at it in that way. And as we're looking at these charts, we see these different issues, in my opinion, across the district. Sometimes we have these conversations and we leave away thinking that it's only in certain schools. So I think if we're going to work on climate change and truly addressing this problem, we have to establish that it could potentially be something that's systemic, meaning that it's something in the system we have to address in order to get the changes that we're trying to get, like we began to do with the Promise program. So that's my comment.
Anyone else with regard to the screen, and then we can ask more questions.
I'll yield to Ms. Mashala, and then if the Madam Chair, if I can have a question.
You may, Ms. Mashala.
Judge, I don't need the screen. If you want the screen taken off, as I think my question is without whether we have the screen up or not. But to follow up on what Dr. Osgood was saying, just to piggyback a little bit, because I like the visual of this, I wondered if it's possible to break down the spreadsheet between particularly middle school, high school. Elementary school is not as significant, I don't think, to the topic that we're talking about, but of course it factors in. But it would be nice to have a spreadsheet where we have sort of the middle school side by side and then just the high school side by side, because to Dr. Osgood's point, when we're dissecting the statistics, we could also visually see that here's all the high schools in Broward, here are the numbers, and then break down further, like Dr. Osgood said, in fairness to these schools. If a population at one school is higher than another, then maybe the averages are really the same at the end of the day. But I would like to see them side by side rather than having to scroll up and down between every charter school, elementary school, and high school. For the next time, we might look at this.
Okay, and there will be a next time, trust me.
Right.
All right, anything else, Ms. Mashala?
No, thank you.
All right, Chief Evans and then Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question being, years ago when we started this, and Mr. Weeks may remember, this is self-reported data based on the input of an administrator, right? And so this goes back to early 2011 or so. And we began to compare the data using the department's data because we were unable to work around what resulted in a law enforcement arrest. So to Mr. Walker, the question is, for arrest, did these result in a case number, like a police incident response? Let me put it that way.
That's a great question. And as you guys know, that I started in this role just this time last year, and I'm learning these new nuances as we go. And that was a question that I brought up as well. And we are going to take this data back and go back, because you're correct. There could be an arrest at the school site that did not result in the end with the charges being brought forward. So I do want to do some more work with the data to make sure that it's as accurate as possible, because there could be a few cases within these numbers that did exactly like you're saying, not end up in an arrest. So we do need to go back, and we want to make, there's a couple of things that we're going to be doing to try and ensure the accuracy of the data. So like you said, that's why I started off with saying, in full disclosure, this data represents administrator input into our discipline management system. And we're looking into cross-referencing that with the juvenile justice reports, that we can ensure that they reflect the most accurate data.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walker.
And Mr. Weeks.
First, I'd like to thank the school board for presenting this information, and this data is very helpful. For some of us that have been around for a while, like Ms. Evans pointed out, it seems like a little deja vu that we're going back and looking at this and starting from scratch again. But it's good to do that because it will figure out whether we're moving in the right direction, whether we need to re-implement some things that we did in the past. One of the things that I want to follow up with Ms. Michelle was not only breaking it down by middle school and high school, but also breaking it down by potential population. For example, there's a few of those schools that are 1,500 student plus. Those should be all grouped together. The middle schools that are maybe 500 to 700 students grouped together, and then the smaller schools together. Because 2 arrests in a smaller school may be more demonstrative of an issue rather than 2 arrests in a school with 3,000 children. So I am not able to look at that chart like Dr. Osgood and can visualize where those schools are at. She's physically been to every one of those schools in Broward County, so she has a much better feel of what the school is like geographically, size, and things of that sort. For some of us, we have to just digest it a little bit slower. So if you can help us, let's categorize the schools not only by high school and middle school, but by the larger schools together, the medium-sized schools together, and the smaller schools together, because we will see things based on the numbers in those smaller schools as opposed to those larger schools.
Judge Williams.
Yes, I just want to say, sometimes I tend to pick up the gun and then I'll fire and then I'll aim after I've fired and hope to be accurate. But here's my question. Before Parkland, there was a school-based reduction of 90% of school arrests based upon the Promise Program. That's the data that I have, a 90% reduction. I go over to the school board on Thursday afternoons. I see the state attorney representative, Lisa Lewis, the number 2 person who's there. And clearly the state attorney's office, as I speak, has a concerted effort not to charge children with school-based arrests. I see it with my own eyes in my courtroom, but on Thursday afternoons. I guess my question becomes, Madam Chair, Runcie kind of led the charge to reduce school-based arrests. We can talk about data all day, and it's important that we talk about the data. But my question is, does the current school board leadership, I know the state attorney is there, I know the PD is there, I know the judiciary is there, but does the current school board have a leadership structure where they are also in agreement that we need to just go ahead and reduce school arrests? Because I don't have a Dr. Runcie, at least I haven't heard of Superintendent Runcie at this point, speak loud and clear. So that's my concern, is beyond the data, is there a concerted effort by the whole school board administration to reduce this number of arrests? And Ms. Hudge, it's just a loud question, a rhetorical question, but I just need to know at this time as we speak, does the school board have a concerted effort to reduce school arrests?
So thank you for that, Judge Williams, Madam Chair, if I could.
You may.
So I would say that the school board, along with Superintendent Cartwright, are watching the data, and that we are in conversations right now around structuring to make sure that we can take a very proactive approach in addressing when we see the data in an increased effort. But they are definitely concerned about the arrest data within the schools, and we are trying to put structures together where she's really trying to put her organizational structure around trying to make sure that we are ready to be in a preventative manner, if you will, with how we're going to work with schools, how we're going to train schools, how we're going to ensure that the right communications are getting out there about how they utilize the discipline matrix. So we are beginning to have those conversations around that piece. So I hope Judge Williams that kind of answered it to a certain degree, because she is just in the process of trying to do our organizational structure.
Thank you.
And I see Dr. I tell you, hold on, Senator Osgood, because I got a hand from someone that hasn't spoken yet. So that's going to be Colonel Holmes and then Senator Osgood.
Hello, Madam Chair. One of the things I think is important for us to pay attention to is, very often when it comes to schools and school-based arrests, it could be an incident where there's like a one-time school brawl or a major incident. I wouldn't say a major incident, but an incident that involves a numerous amount of students. And those numbers really can skew things. And if it's not a systemic problem at that particular school, one incident can throw things way off. And that's something that I would highly recommend that we really dive into to make sure that the numbers are accurate or make sense to what, if there's any serious problems that need to be looked at, especially from a PD standpoint.
Right. Senator Osgood.
Thank you. And that was going to be one of my comments, Colonel Holmes, but I think we also have to be specific about police departments. Some police departments arrest Black kids in some areas more than others. They don't have a culture of that I feel is in line with the perspective of the superintendent and the school board. Not all of them. When we look at the data, it'll be interesting to see, like Coconut Creek, they wanted.
And Coral Springs, don't leave them out. Put
Yeah,
Coral
they
Springs
wanted,
and Coconut. The
yeah,
Coconut.
they wanted a
and
drug
Coral.
screening dog in the school, a bomb sniffing dog in the school at Coconut Creek. And we know our kids don't fare well. We don't like dogs being turned loose on us. And then Coral Springs was one of the police departments that actually purchased the vaping test kits so that when they catch kids vaping, they can identify what they're vaping, and I'm sure you'll see a very different arrest number with those two police departments primarily when you compare them to other police departments. And I think that's important because just like we, advocate and we give our voice when police are not doing right, I think it's also important that those that are working in the right spirit with our kids and trying to help us keep kids out of jail when possible, that we also need to speak to that and have them share and replicate the best practices that they're using that could help these other police departments. I don't want us to go through this data and just lump all the police departments together. You will find that there is differences and some law enforcement entities with good leadership that prioritize kids and understand that they may have a hiccup every now and then. When Colonel Holmes was speaking about one incident, I saw plantation on there. I know there's times when it's 3 or 4 fights happening at one time. So you will have a large number of arrests if weapons and other things are involved. Then if it's just ongoing throughout the year, that one incident can cause a major number. We all remember and probably shedded tears, and you probably like me was up all night when you saw the 3 kids plot to murder another kid at Miramar. So that one incident changes the data for Miramar, for the state attorney's office as to how that moves forward.
Right. Look, this is what's going to happen. It is difficult. And Mr. Walker, I do want to, on behalf of Chair Ellison, thank you for putting something together for this presentation. But it's very difficult to see something for the first time on a screen. You don't have it, and there's some people that learn audibly, and some people have to see it. Some people have to touch it and see it. So what I'm going to ask is that if we could have, our next meeting is in June 8th of this year. If what we have discussed can be put together, and what I'm going to do is I will review the tape of this meeting, as will Chair Ellison, and put together all the requests that we have asked for. I know I've seen you writing, but we need to be able to pull this information out. Like, for instance, separate the charter schools from the public schools there, police arrests. And that concerns me, because just because the argument started in the cafeteria and nothing happened, but then they go across the street to the mall and have a fight, that's now being categorized as a school-based arrest. even though it happened across the street from the school. So I need some clarification on that also, because to expel students from a school, even though they had an argument, nothing happened, they go across the street and then it escalates in the mall. You know, so I know there's, and Judge Williams will correct me if I'm incorrect, I know there's a continuation of criminal activity. And so I'm trying to find out if that's what the school board uses to say that this is a school-based arrest. And I'm not trying to get you all to commit to a statement, but I'm thinking of that Coconut Creek incident that the kids, you know, got in a fight and then all of a sudden became felonies because somebody said brown power. And I'm still trying to figure that out. I've never heard a Black person say brown power. It's always been Black power. So I'm concerned about that type of behavior and those statistics, and then the punishments that are meted out when something like that happens. So Mr. Walker, if you could just start, you know, looking, I know you're new, so the hot seat is still hot though, you know. So if you could sort of like, and as I said, I'll try to go through this as quickly as I can and get it to Ms. Hudge to give to you. But, you know, when you're starting to extract things, if it's on a computer, you know, your IT people can extract everything without too much, you know, toil and sweat to get that to us. Because this board is tasked with looking at, you know, what's going on with our juveniles. But when I hear a statistic that 84% of the arrests being made are of Black children. So we're failing somewhere. And, you know, we can't just say, well, they're the worst. They, you know, because I've seen some other colored people do some terrible things. I've put them in prison. I put them on death row for things like that. And it kind of gets swept under the rug. They're an anomaly, but it's a normality when Black people do it. So we want to try to change that narrative. We're not hollering, you know, hollering at people, but we're just trying to say, and Miss Chief Evans hit the nail on the head. We've been talking about this stuff, or this board has, going back to like 2011, 2010. So, you know, here it is 2022 and we're still talking about the same thing. So we're trying to come to some solutions. We're not going to rush to judgment, but Mr. Walker and Ms. Hudge, if you can help us out on that, we will certainly be in your good debts and graces for that, because the numbers don't lie. What happens is the folks that's inputting the numbers, you know, if they are exercising some discretion and not putting everything, I want to say Miss Evans, but Chief Evans, you know, indicate that's self-reporting, and your numbers are a little different from DJJ's numbers. So if we could get these reports prior to our June meeting, and we can disseminate them to our members so that they would know and have questions that are germane based upon the numbers. But it's difficult for me to digest something on the screen and then check to see who's in the chat and who's raising their hand. So if you all will indulge us with that. So Ms. Hudge, do you think you can come back in June if we're inviting you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And if I could, Madam Chair, I just want to just go back over the things that I've heard today to make sure that when we go back, to try to
and if she misses anything, just throw out what you requested. I tried to write down, but it's hard to do that. Ms. Hudge, take care. Do it.
Okay. So one of the first things I heard was really breaking out the data, separating it from charter to make sure that we have our traditional schools versus our charter schools, updating to 2018 and even prior to MSD. Also, I heard promise data, really kind of separating out the promise data. And if we could look at separating the middle school and high school breakdown so that we can make a comparison there. Also, we talked about the fact, and we kind of shared with you all, that we want to do a deeper dive to make sure that the DJJ data and what is being reported versus what is being entered at schools is accurate and more aligned. So we are going to do a deeper dive into that. And one of the last two requests is around the grouping of populations of schools by demographics. So the number of students in the school, if we could do some clustering of the data so that some comparisons can be looked at in that way. And then finally is the list of police departments. If we could also add in the police departments. I saw that one in the chat as well. And then your final request was to come back in June. And certainly we will be more than happy to come back in June to share any updates.
All right. Do you think we could get that information that the board members could have that in advance of the June meeting?
It is definitely going to, in all my attempts to try to get it to you before the June.
Okay, but if you need more time, if you let the chair know, or I put my email address in the, and I represent the NAACP also. So if you reach a glitch or something and you need more time, we can certainly honor that request because this is important information.
Agreed.
That we're
and
asking.
I saw in the chat that there were approximately 6 individuals that put the email addresses in for us to share the data with them. And of course,
you know what? Even if you send it to the chair or to me, we'll do a mass emailing. So everybody's gonna get it. So if you want to just save time and send it to the chair, and you can CC me. And I'm not the vice chair by any means. It's just that, but I read this stuff late at night, and I can get emails out real quick. So I'll volunteer to do that.
Will do. And thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Now,
thank you for having us.
I'll segue into school-based arrest and the metal detectors. Dr. Wanza, who'd you invite for that?
Good afternoon again. So joining us for that conversation is the Chief of the Special Investigative Unit, Chief Craig Kowalski, and Dr. John Burbidge. Dr. Burbidge is the Task Assigned Director for Safety and Security.
And Doctor and Chief, in your presentation, if you could, enlighten me on how you came about the 4 pilot schools.
So just to clarify, there were 5.
I heard 4 during the meeting. So we got Silver Trails, Plantation, Northeast, Piper, and who else?
So the original 4, so the original 4, the day of the meeting that was reported to us was Silver Trail, Plantation, Northeast, and Piper. And then what happened was later that day, Hollywood Hills the principal put in a request. So then they considered that later that day to be as a part of the pilot, but the original 4 schools identified were Silver Trail, Plantation, Northeast, and Piper. And correct me if I'm wrong. And then Mr. Mose at Hollywood Hills High then asked to be included.
Okay. Correct. All right, carry on, sir. Carry on.
So you asked how they were chosen?
Just as opposed to Deerfield Beach High, or as opposed to, I'm just trying to figure out.
The first people that raised their hands, as far as the principals, that's who we wanted the school to want to participate and not cause an overburden. And these principals were first to jump forward, and they wanted to introduce and be part of a program that they could have some input in. So that being said, I think John is driving. So we talk about a randomized approach. You've heard the superintendent talk about it. And we'll show you some screenshots a little further on of how that randomization works. But again, the whole purpose of this program is for general deterrence. So when we have, if you think about, and we try to equate it to airports, when you go to maybe a sporting event, and we've experienced it, sporting events at the schools, right? So they're screening. There they screen everybody at a sporting event. Here we're just doing random selection, and it's based on all purposes of random number generator software solution. So it's nothing fancy. It's an Excel. So you'll see that in a little bit, but it's just random. And what it does, it pulls a random school, or when you set, say, up to 3 schools, depending on the frequency and how the volume that we're going to be able to handle during non-testing site times. It pulls the numbers, the school numbers. All schools have room numbers programmed into the system already, and those are room numbers that are occupied by students. And it picks X number of rooms, and then we go on from there. Then we're told that morning or that evening, so we can get some people out, and then we go to the location. So when we talk about being carried out by a screening team, in a couple of slides, we'll tell you what the screening team's made of, but we always do want to have an administrator from the school there. They're familiar with the actual students. So John, I don't know if you want to touch on the targeted prevention.
Sure. So we engage, the targeted prevention is engaged in response to a specific threat or tip received by us here at the Security Operations Center, here at the school board, or through our partners in law enforcement. So Safer Watch or Fortify Florida. And that would be in response to a specific threat where we will, maybe target every 5th student or every 10th student on their way in, again, in response to a specific credible threat.
So again, I'm sure with our See Something, Say Something campaign, Fortify Florida is a big method of way things come in. So when we see one from a school, we start seeing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, within a short period of time. And if there's reference to weapons or somebody's going to be specific, Craig's going to bring a gun or a knife to school. So if it's specific, obviously we don't need to do the random. We go into the reasonable suspicion, and Mr. Weeks can correct me on that one. But we go into that and we search them directly. So, but if there's just a general, I hear rumors that somebody's going to bring a weapon, the targeted selection, I don't like the word targeted, but the random selection process is not, we don't use the program at that point. We're going to a school, right, for a purpose. And I can tell you Hollywood Hills, for example, that was specific. He was having issues with people allegedly saying that they're bringing weapons on campus, and there was tips coming in. So we put that, again, we got to come up with a better word besides targeted, but that data driven and either specific to a threat response. So again, it's carried out by security with the support of law enforcement. And when we say support of law enforcement is there in the background to react to something that may be found, maybe like a gun, a knife, because that's the whole purpose of this screening. It's to find weapons. So here's the screening team. As you can see, it's made up of school leadership, 4 security staff, usually managers or area security managers. And we've committed to a minimum of 2 law enforcement officers being there. And the law enforcement is either my office, SIU, or the SRO. Questions came up with the municipalities, and the colonel can probably speak to this also. We worked with Major DeMarco from BSO. They brought up concerns about tying up the SRO, doing this. So that's why my office is committed to bring in two people to not tie them up. But there's also positive, when there's a positive spin to, if the SRO is there, they know the kids, right? There's more of a sense of familiarity. So when strangers come in, they may react a little different. So the pilot schools we did, let me tell you, the agencies were awesome. They observed and they wanted to see how it worked. If they had any questions, they asked. In one of the school, I can tell you, Plantation, the town of Davie actually came and observed also. So we had a lot of buy-in and support from the municipality. So
if I could just interject real quickly, under the full-time security, you have a bag team and a student team. You have student screening?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of how it works. So a room number is selected, randomly selected. and say it's room 100. So what happens, we go into the room, a individual identified by us, obviously it's one of our staff, comes in and reads a script. The script says what to expect. You know, we're in here, you know, we describe the program, and then we go tell them, okay, leave your belongings, walk out of the room, and then we tell them they're going to be, you know, wanded outside in the adjoining space. So we give them the script for all of them are done the same. So we read it when we go into the room. So there's a known expectation of what's going to happen. The bags stay in the room. So that's that bag team. So then the student team is the students walk out of the room and they're wanded separately in the bags. That make sense?
When I saw that, I thought maybe you were having students conduct searches and seizures. I had some issues with that. But
oh yeah, no, yeah.
Okay, all right, I'm good.
I'm glad you asked for the clarification on that one. So you can go to the next slide, John. So when we talk about recording, I mean, you know, we want to capture everything, obviously. So we use something called Smart Sheet. That one of our directors introduced to us recently. Probably he's been using it for the last year and a half. It's easy to track information in this. It makes nice diagrams so people can see it, because people like visual things too, versus just seeing numbers. We can fill it out on our phones when we're actually conducting the screening, and then it uploads the data and it's automatically tracked and memorialized at that point. It feeds a dashboard. Again, people are visual. I don't know, I like seeing, you know, pictures sometimes, right? So to understand just a big overview of what's going on. So it actually, the data is like, imagine, you know, an Excel spreadsheet, you know, feeding a whatever you want.
Just a form, just an input form.
Just a form. Yeah, it could be a pie chart, whatever you want it to make, it'll come out and it tells you what the information you're looking for. And this is just showing you examples. That's all. Next. So this is more of an in-depth, right, look at what the tool is to function at. So the first box on the top left is how the random selection for the school happens. So every school has an MSID number. It's a number assigned to the school. It's a 4-digit number. So we press a button and it selects X number of schools out of that point. Then we take that one school and then we plug it into the next. You'll see on the right-hand side, specific school down. So I mean, school drill down. And then what that does, it takes the school and then it takes from where we have the data entry for the rooms, and it picks a room. And again, the rooms are generated from, you know, known, when I say known to have students in them, not what students are in there, but known to have students in there. We don't want to search a custodial closet. We don't want that part of the data. So we archive the information for future reference if it ever comes up. And that's what that orange area is showing. And actually the step-by-step directions are on the bottom left-hand side of how to actually do it. So it's easily understood. And again, this is just an overview of the same process as far as the outputs. Like, for example, I'm going to show you, like it talks about Pompano Beach Middle, right in the middle of the screen on the right-hand side. So it'll say the school number, and then it throws out what period, building, room, and it tells us how many seats are occupied. So we need to know when we actually go into the room, we know how many students are supposed to be enrolled in there. So we have an idea how to anticipate the time it's going to take actually to do the search. Because the goal is to not disrupt the educational learning process that's the ultimate goal, right? To limit that interruption, because that's been, when we went to like the DAC and other committees, that was a concern as far as interruption of the actual educational time. So we could better prepare staff as far as our responses when we know it's a high number, and we can figure out how quick it's going to be. So
This is just a breakdown of what
John
was
wanted to take
discovered. Craig, you want to just keep going? You got a momentum there.
my screen just went off.
Okay.
Hold on a sec.
Is it still sharing? Can everyone else see?
We're still seeing pilot schools. Okay, then there's a
Okay.
Q&A. Okay.
Yeah, so this one, this is fine because I think this may generate some questions, so I can see it now. Yeah, so 5 secondary schools, we added that, we talked about the last one. So during the pilots, this is what we found. So part of the screening program, the whole focus is to discover weapons, right? Deter the students from bringing them on. Well, we found a taser, right? The other things are just incidental, and those are contraband. So out of this, there was only 1 arrest. So the rest of it was disciplinary action for the contraband.
Can I ask which one got arrested? Couldn't have been the marijuana then, because
So the weapon, it's the taser.
Okay, I kind of figured that.
Yeah, no comment.
All right, are there any questions from the board members? All right, Colonel Holmes?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Yes. Oh, Mr. Walters? Colonel
Yes.
Holmes, let me let Mr. Walters ask his question, and then I'll come back to you. All right, Mr. Walters, yes, you have the floor, sir.
I thank you, Madam Chair. I just have 2 quick questions. On the pilot program, number 1, how long will the pilot program last? And 2, once the pilot program is over and you find it to be useful, will all schools come on board with the screening? Are you going to piecemeal? That's question 1. Question number 2, if law enforcement find it prohibited, as on that case, marijuana item, how is the process of remedying the violation handled, and what is the punishment for the student?
So I'm gonna answer the first one. So in respect to when it's gonna end, we're gonna regroup with the new chief safety and security officer and superintendent and give them the information, which they've already have, and we just need to make a decision, and Dr. Wanza maybe can to attest to this. There's testing going on, and that was a concern. So that's why we paused right in between before going through and just implementing it. Testing was a concern and disruption of the, those tests.
But how long have you been doing it so far before the pause?
I think in end of March we did it. So we, end of March, and we stopped it. We roughly only did like 2-3 weeks. 2-3 weeks of the pilot schools. Over the 5 schools were done over a 3-week period, just by mere fact of testing began, and that came up as a concern as far as interruption, and I believe we
testing started in April.
Yeah, we impact. So we can't go in a classroom and start the searching because it invalidates tests. I believe that is the issue at hand. So we don't want to risk that.
And then the second part of the question is, once the pilot is over, will the wands or the screenings be done at every school, or are you going to just do it at certain schools?
The focus continues to be secondary schools. When I say secondary, it'll be high, middle, high, and centers like not like the Quest Center or Bright Horizons.
Our alternative high schools and our behavior change centers at the secondary level.
There we go.
All right, and then Mr. Walters' second question is what were the punishments meted out for the violations that were found? Mr. Walters, I'm trying to summarize your questions and make sure they get answered.
You're doing very good, Madam Chair. If you can answer the way you asked, that's fine with me.
So, I mean, we followed I'd have to come back and get the specifics. However, we didn't break it down by student, right? So if you saw, we had a generalization on that slide. So what would happen is, I can tell you the one that had the taser was arrested. As far as school-related discipline, what was doled out, it was in compliance with the student code of conduct.
Okay. Is it possible to find out what police departments are called when the arrests are made?
So I want to be clear, in the specific, the pilot?
Yeah,
or-
the child with the taser was arrested by what department? Because they had to be called, so was it a BSO arrest? Was it, we're not asking names, just.
Right, no, I know, I can find out in a second, so you're gonna see me go off video, but the question, so. John, would you know off the top of your head?
Colonel Holmes said it was BSO.
I think, yeah, okay, yep. Thank you, Colonel. Yes, it was BSO.
Okay, Mr. Walters, I kind of reframed your questions, but if you have any follow-up based upon my reframing, you may go ahead.
I just want to know if any of these students either in the program now and program in the future, if there's a violation, do it automatically lead to arrest, or do we refer to promise, or we issue civil citations? I need to know, based on the incident, what happens, how the serious charges of violations compare to little Roosevelt just having to have a fingernail file in his pocket.
Is Ms. Hudge still on, or Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Well, that's something that,
yeah.
Dr. Wanza, could you have Mr. Walker add that?
I will, but yes.
From my knowledge of the process is, to answer your question, it's three, talking to Mr. Walker, myself, it's three promise
eligible
offenses. So, it could be, it's 1, 2, 3. So it's not just, it's just three, could be drugs, it could be fighting, whatever it is, it's 3. And same thing, and Colonel Holmes knows the civil citation program better than me, but it's also 3. If I'm not correct, let me know. It's 3 chances at the civil citation too. So, what's supposed to happen is when we enter it into the, forgive me, I don't recall the name, prevention web. We're supposed to be checking, when I say we, school district and law enforcement is supposed to be checking to make sure there's no overlap in, like, say today, I got a referral for promise, and then tomorrow I'm getting a civil citation for the same offense, or whether it's, say it's marijuana, leaf-based marijuana. So everybody's supposed to be checking that, also to ensure that we capture and offer services to somebody we see with a constant maybe arrest or contact with law enforcement. So that's what I know. And again, I'm sure that the Colonel can jump in with the civil citation program.
Wait, he's the next question, but I just wanted to make sure because Mr. Walters is on the phone, that we
Gotcha.
cover his questions. Anything further, Mr. Walters?
No, I will catch you on June 8th.
It's gonna be exciting, I tell you that. All right, Colonel Holmes, thank you for deferring.
Yes, Madam Chair and other board members. This program, BSO, has been somewhat involved in. We've been waiting patiently to see to what extent we would have our involvement in. And I was briefed by my major and captain on this pilot program. And one of our concerns thus far has been the chain of custody. And I know that the school board SIU unit is working to try to iron that out because that's a huge concern of ours. We had the arrest that had taken place, did take place at a BSO, a school where one of our SRDs was involved. And the good thing out of that situation was that we were able to issue a civil citation to that student, and that's what this civil citation program is all about. It was an innocent type of thing that took place, and our school resource deputy was able to definitely get involved and intervene. But for us at BSO, it's important for us and SIU to be on the same page. And I know that they're working on iron out several small things, but with us, the chain of custody is the biggest thing. As far as other law enforcement agencies, it's going to be important that they get on the same page as well, because we all are aware there are a couple municipalities that currently aren't on board with us and the things that we're trying to do. I know this advisory board, we have a path that we want to go on, and we have a couple municipalities that's not on the same path right now. So those are important things that we have to pay attention to. But I can tell you here at BSO, I've been in touch, like I said, with my major and my captains. We're monitoring things closely as things develop, and the process and the protocols are being established. We will provide any input to help, Chief Kowalski and your staff to make things go smoothly. And if we hear or see anything that can assist you in improving things, we're definitely going to step up to the plate. And hopefully we can be a model for the other municipalities and making this work smoothly and fairly for everyone.
All right, and the next hand, Mr. Weeks, and I'm going to kind of move us along a little bit. The presentations went a little long, and we have an agenda that we have to cover, but this was so necessary to educate this board on what's going on. So, Mr. Weeks, you may be heard, and then Chief Evans, you're right after him. I saw your hand up.
I won't go into a great detail. I just wanted to offer a suggestion of possibly an amnesty portion of your process, where you would offer, an amnesty for those folks that turn things in rather than be searched and found on them, so you could accomplish the goal of identifying the item and removing it from the school, and then offering some goodwill to those students that participate in the amnesty. It's just a consideration. Communities do it all across the nation. They do it at airports. They do it all over the place, going into government buildings, some amnesty for those folks that are going to turn it in rather than be subject to arrest. So consider that and how you work that in. The second thing was your pilot program started with 4 schools, and then a principal called to volunteer to be a 5th school. Doesn't that skew your data? If there is a principal that is calling to participate, it suggests that he may have some concerns. So you're probably going to have a higher rate. And the reason why I proposed or asked that question is, of the 5 or the items that were found, were they found at that volunteered school as opposed to the schools that were randomly selected?
No, so I can tell you nothing was found at that last school. So yes, I hear you, but it's part of the pilot program, so that randomization doesn't come into play because we wouldn't have had 5 principals raise their hand, right? So in addition, just to throw this back out to you, is we received threats of, weapons being found and, just not a threat, but complaints. I don't know, you can hear it in the neighborhood sometimes, and what happens is they get on Fortify Florida and then it spreads. When I say that, I mean specifically to this school, there was, just very good details about information, but luckily when we went there, nothing was found. So again, I hear you with that. We're the pilot program, as we call it here, it's really the principals that really provided input and support. And I just want to throw something out there for Dr. Wanza's team, because one of the principals, she's like, we got to get this in front of the kids, right? So what she means is we need to educate the students about the program because we want to know what they should expect, right? So when we walk in, we don't want overreaction. It's like, okay, this is the next step. So through their student government, they're going to have conversations, educate the students, right? So of the program, we got to spread the word. When you come onto the campus, and even when you're a student on the campus, you should know, okay, so if a group comes in, this is what to expect. Don't get over agitated. This is the expectation. So they got to have the conversations in the schools to talk to the kids and spread the information, because it's not just about telling the parents. The kids are the ones that impact. So if they understand what's occurring, they'll be more cooperative. So just wanted to say that.
Mr. Weeks, anything further? I like the amnesty.
Any feedback on the amnesty?
Yeah, I heard that.
All right, Chief Evans and then Senator Osgood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 2 quick points. To follow up on Mr. Walters' question, if the pilot is unsuccessful, right, and it does not yield the results that are hoped to be realized in the pilot, I just would like to hear, perhaps at a later meeting, what the other strategies that are under consideration for school safety. And secondly, I would like to ask that these efforts for creating a climate of school safety, both perceived and real, be worked in tandem with the efforts of the Uptick Committee that's been looking at the increase in aggression and aggressive charges and the threats. That includes the state attorney, the department, BSO, and many other municipalities, that is truly prevention focused and includes education and interventions as well. And so I know that's under the leadership of Mr. Watkins. So we in turn will be working against one another, but with one another to create overall school and community safety. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So if I may address both of those?
Yeah, you may.
Yeah, so.
But we got to keep those answers sort of concise.
Okay,
So,
gotcha. Hey, I like explaining things. So, so the metal detector program is a layered approach. It's just one of many things we do at the school district to approach the whole overall impact of safety and security. I mean, additional staff, single point of entries, the cameras. So this is not the only thing we do. This is another layer of security towards the schools. So, I just want to point that out to you. We don't want to just say this is the only thing we're doing, because it almost sounded like what's the desired outcome as far as the number. The deterrence is what we desire, right? So that's just an additional layer. So I don't know if you wanted to say something. No? Okay.
No. Senator Osgood, because I think you have some background on what's going on here.
Yeah, so let's just be real clear. I think that we have to get to a place where we're open and honest about school campuses. There are weapons, there are fights, there are threats. you can sometimes be literally afraid in a school, wondering if something is going to happen while you're there. That's not the fault of the district. It is a real live reality. A fight takes place at the flea market on Saturday. Me and my sister jump you. When I come to school on Monday, you and your sister gonna jump me with a knife. Right after MSD, I was a strong advocate against any kind of wanding or metal detectors because I was really convinced that our kids would be targeted. As we started looking at data where we went from having reports of 2 guns on campus for the whole year to sometimes 2 or 3 a week, as a policymaker, as an adult from a safety perspective, you have to put in some other measure of prevention and safety to try to help you identify if there are weapons, if there are guns, or there are things going on that you can't see. I have always been overly concerned about the knives that we find on campuses. And a lot of times it doesn't play out in the news the way a gun does. So when this initiative came, I was still a board member at that time. I did support it because I felt that the increase in what we were seeing with weapons, the aggression, as Chief Evans said, and fighting on school campuses had dramatically increased. So if you can identify someone with something before someone is harmed or hurt, it is what you have to do. We have to be realistic about school campuses. Right now, I'm looking as good as I'm looking because I'm not as stressed out because I'm not getting notifications all day about bomb threats, gun threats on social media, weapon found in school, kid found with gun, kid found with knife. It is a real reality that happens in the school. And as we work as a community, we have to help take measures to deal with our children where they're not bringing these weapons, where they learn how to resolve conflict without the weapons. We can't say that the district is doing something wrong when they're trying to keep everybody safe. I wouldn't want you to be in a school volunteering, and many of you do, and you end up getting cut or stabbed, and the district's not doing anything to try to identify those knives. The principal at Hollywood Hills probably requested to be in this program because they know what they're dealing with every day. If you talk to some principals, people that work on campuses, they can tell you that fights happen in an aggressive way that you could never even imagine, where somebody's being stomped, they're being this. So it is a real reality. So I'm going to continue to give the truth. You know, I'm not on the board now, so I could say it like it is. I don't have to worry about being filtered. But we have to address this violence. As we talk about guns in the community, it is violence on school campuses. And it's not just schools in certain neighborhoods. These fights happen in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, just like they happen at Dillard. But it is an issue that the school district can't fix within herself. That it's going to take all of us, like Chief Evans was saying, to help address this aggression and this mental health and how people just go off. You know, you could be in line in Walgreens now and on your phone and somebody will shoot you a bird because you ain't moving quick enough. That plays out in the school campus as well.
Thank you, Dr. Osgood. And I will say this, Senate Bill 80, Senate Bill 802 passed the legislature and was signed by the governor. It created within the Department of Education an Office of Enforcement and Security for schools. And I think it was formed largely in part to what happened with the after the Stoneman Douglas report was issued by the committee that was reviewing what happened at the school. So the schools have to take this initiative, and even if the local school board, Broward, does not do it, the state's going to send folks down to Broward to enforce, wanding and doing things. So I think the way the school board is easing it in, it makes it more palatable for the students. And coming from Tallahassee as opposed to living in Broward, you have a vested interest when you live in this county to make it palatable, to make it easy for the children, as opposed to having somebody come down and, you know, they don't care. They work for DOE and that's all they're going to do is do their job. So we'll talk more about this initiative because it's important. And Mr. Weeks, I do understand your concern because, you know, a simple wanding could lead to an arrest. And then they wind up in the juvenile courts as one of your clients. So I'm concerned about it, but we're going to move on. What I want to say is, Ms. Mashallah, are you still on? I missed last month's meeting, but I heard your report with regard to the clerk's office and them assigning case numbers. I firmly believe that there's a simple remedy, and I'd like to meet with you. You know, I'll set up a Zoom. You and I can talk because it's in Judge Tudor's administrative order that the state attorney's office and the clerk's office would come up with procedures to implement the referrals. That's what the probable cause affidavits are called. They're called referrals in Judge Tudor's order signed last June. So I'd like to meet with you before I throw out stuff. And, you know, you could have somebody from the clerk's office present. Mr. Weeks, if you want to be present, the same committee that came up with the civil citation and that order came out of that committee. So anybody that wants to be on there, I tell you what, the easy thing is just put in the chat, you know, Judge, I don't want to be part of that meeting. I don't want to be on there, but I think it can be remedied. And so we'll stop talking about things. This is going on my second year on this board, and we're still talking about civil citations and how to implement it. Ms. Brown, I think you might want to be present too, since you do something. So I'll send out a notice. Is tomorrow good for anybody?
Judge, if I may, before you go to the trouble, I have a meeting with the clerk's office next week.
Okay, well, no, that's not soon. I think you ought to meet with me first because I'm trying not to embarrass Mr. Pryor because we got an administrative order that says.
I know the order that you're referring to. I mean, I'll meet with you if you like.
That's the only order. That's the only order. Well, you know, I can tell you the easy thing, but I just didn't want, we're short on time. And I didn't want to go into.
No, we can meet, but I just wanted to assure you that I am meeting with the clerk's office next week.
I never said you weren't, but we're just, you know, we're talking about the same thing that we talked about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm the kind of person, I'm saying we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and that's insane. So I do have what I feel Judge Tudor's order calls for. And I'd like to give it to you, and then you can give it to the clerk. So the clerk doesn't even have to be there. I would just like to throw it out to you, so that you can make it palatable to them. Sure. Because I think it's a simple solution. That was my whole career on the bench, coming up with simple solutions. When I was administrative judge for criminal, my job was to come up with simple solutions, and we did. We accomplished a lot because it can be done. So I'm a do it, get it done person, and I think you'll be happy with it. So they don't even have to be present. I'm not trying to steal your thunder. I'm just trying to give you ideas. Before I just start saying, look, the state attorney's office obviously doesn't want to do this. Judge Tudor, you got this order. What are you going to do about it? So if you could placate me, because, you know, the chair is on me. And I said, look, I did what you had tasked me to do. I was on the committee. We came up with it and it's done. So it'll take all of 20, 25 minutes. So if you can tell me a time tomorrow that you're available, I'll make it happen.
Just give me one moment.
What about doing lunch hour?
Before we get to the end of the meeting, I will give you a time for tomorrow. What's your schedule, your judge?
I'm saying let's do it during the lunch hour.
Oh, okay.
Because everybody, you know, bring your own lunch. I'm not sending Uber over to you. But I think I have an obligation because I've been tasked to do certain things, and I'm trying to say, look, we can avoid that if I can just talk to Ms. Mashallah, and that way you can take it to the clerk. I'm not trying to get, look, I've been in the paper long enough, been on TV. I ain't trying to be famous. I'm just trying to get things done as these juveniles are involved. And so, 12:30 tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'll send out the Zoom notice. It'll come from me. and I'll send it out. Only let me know if you don't want to be present. But I think we can hash it out, and then you can take it to the clerk. I'll leave the clerk's office up to you. Okay, I have no vested, I have no desire to be with them, but I ran this by somebody and they said, oh, that makes sense. So Ms. Phillips, if you'll be on, because I ran it by you and you said it made sense. Sometimes I have to use people as my sounding board because, you know, I'll come up with ideas and let's get it done. You know, I do a lot of teaching with Jonathan Gerber on the 4th DCA, and his famous line is, get it done. Get it done. So we're going to get it done before the June 8th meeting. Hopefully that you'll come and you'll say we have, because though you already have a meeting set up with them next week, you'll have some ideas to take to them from us, since we're not going to be at that meeting. Okay. All right. So the next thing, so I won't ask about the civil citation and the clerk. We've already covered that, but I need an update from about Jack and how many people we stopped from being arrested at Jack. Colonel Holmes, were there any people brought in anyway? Because we got three municipalities that don't give a care about civil citation. Florida,
Yes,
which is a Florida statute. So.
All right, I received an update from the staff down there. Since our last meeting, we have had the stopgap measure in place work for us. There were 2 juveniles that were issued civil citations by our deputies down there. One was for petty theft and the other one was for obstruction. I don't know which municipalities were involved. However, I will look further into that and we will address it accordingly. But the stopgap measure is in place and it's working, because there's 2 that would have gone through the system without receiving a civil citation.
So it is working. That's all that we need to know, because we have offenders who don't care. So we need to go around them and make sure that these kids that are eligible get the citations.
Correct.
What about for the city of Fort Lauderdale, Major London? The stopgap? Because I heard your jail was up and operational now. So y'all stopping them from getting arrested? And
yes, well, I shared it at the last meeting that we have a protocol in place now that before you can get an arrest number, you need to verify that the juvenile is not eligible for the juvenile civil citation. So they can't even get to the point of processing the paperwork if that process isn't already adhered to.
do you know if anything has slipped through since you put those measures in effect?
No, ma'am. We did have a missed opportunity that was reported in March, but that was before we put this in place. And that particular situation would not have been eligible for a juvenile civil citation based on the details that were involved.
All right. Well, the chair is going out. I will tell you this will be an agenda item every meeting, the stopgap measures that are in effect. So you might want to, kind of gear your hearts and minds towards that. And before I go, and many of them I think have signed off, but Dr. Wanza, thank you for bringing the representatives from the school board to us to make their presentations. We could have just done a whole hour and a half, 2 hours a piece on each of the presentations. So we had to condense it in. So we will have more questions and we may have to ask you to bring them back, but thank you. All right. Ms. Mashala, any good news, any updates or memorandums of understanding between the people who don't care about 985.12?
Just let, you may already know this, but the expungement workshop dates are July 4th.
We're gonna get to that. I'm trying to find out about the MOUs.
The MOUs.
Remember you were talking about the memorandums of understanding last meeting?
That we had spoken with Coconut Creek. We had met with Coconut Creek. We circled back.
Okay.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am. You were going to meet with these cities.
And then we're getting ready.
They said that you had no dates yet on that.
We're preparing to meet with Coral Springs, but I have to coordinate with State Attorney Pryor's schedule. So we're still working that out. But our thoughts are we're going to meet.
Could you tell him that the chair really wants something by the June 8th meeting? she really wanted it today, and I told her since it was me, I'm not as forceful as she is. But it would be nice to have something on the table, because we keep talking, we ask every month, and you keep saying, I got to talk to the state attorney, I got to get coordinated. Ms. Mashala, we got to get answers soon, okay? And then delay, you know, I'm not big on continuances anyway, so, you know. So Ms. Mashala, something's got to be done. Something has to be done. You can't keep saying the same thing. You said that the last meeting. I'm gonna get with the state attorney prior.
Well, the first meeting that we scheduled was the clerk's meeting, so I was trying to get that out of the way. And I my apologies, but I have a pretty tight schedule as well, so we do the best we can to calendar among each other. But I was trying to make that a priority for next week, which is the clerk's
Please
meeting.
do make the juveniles, make the babies a priority, please.
Well, I am. That's what I'm doing every day. So that's what I'm saying. That it's very difficult sometimes to coordinate several people, but it is on our radar. And like I said, the first meeting I was trying to have was the clerk's office. So.
All right. Well, I think they'll be happy with what you bring to them after our 12:30 meeting tomorrow. Okay. Let's talk about the dates for the expungement.
Yes, July 14th from 3 in the afternoon till 7 p.m. It will work as it did the last time with juveniles, the workshop for juveniles being a part of the workshop for the whole community. Our providers will be notified, or they are notified, and they will notify the children that are through the diversion programs. And we also will be taking walk-ins.
Can I give me those times again? The time again?
July 14th from 3 to 7. And now I'm trying to remember the location, but somebody else, wonder if anyone else has that information. I want to say, oh, I didn't write it down. My apologies. I'm not even sure if it was given to me, the location. I'll have it on June 8th.
Okay, may I also ask a request that you invite the supervisor of elections office?
Yes.
Okay, because that helps if they got, they're ready to expunge or something like that, they can be talked to about registration. But I think that date is, they can't register for the August election, but they can register for November.
I see.
Since I think June, the August election, the dates close in June. And Senator Osgood, is that correct? The last day to register for the August election would be in June?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, but it will help in November too.
Yes.
So if you could invite the supervisor of elections office on that one. All right. Missed opportunities report. I want to make sure I give some time. We got 17 minutes, but I think we can get it done. Who's going to make that report? Chief Evans. How many did we miss this time?
Well, I'm looking at the report, which I just received yesterday, and I haven't had an opportunity to send it out to Tamika, but we had a total of 17 youth from April 1st to April 30th. These are first-time misdemeanor cases resulting in delinquency processing. So it's a subset truly of all the missed opportunities, which is a different report. Out of those 17, 9 were for domestic violence, leaving the other 12. And like I said, I just received the report, Madam Chair, and I haven't even had a chance to analyze it or share it out. So
you don't know them. Is it the same usual suspects, the Cold Springs, Plantation, Lighthouse Point?
Let me see. I can tell you everyone who's on the list. All right. So this would include, of the 17, it's comprised of these agencies.
And could you tell us how many, or you just tell us
Yes.
who's on the list? Okay, good.
I can. Okay. So I can tell you Coral Springs, 4. Lauderhill, 3. BSO, 2.
Colonel Holmes.
Wait, but again, this includes, it could be the domestic violence one. These are just the total. This is how we went to 17.
Oh, all right.
So, okay, Davie Police.
My sergeant at arms over there, and I'm here. We're talking about that. Okay, BSO 2.
I do not want Colonel Holmes at my door. Okay. Davie Police Department, 2. Coconut Creek. The remaining ones are 1 each. Coconut Creek, Hallandale, Hollywood, Margate, Pembroke Pines, and Sunrise Police Department. But like I said,
You mean Fort Lauderdale's not on that list? Oh, let's give Major London a hand.
So those agencies that were excluding the domestic violence ones, and this is in no particular order: Coconut Creek had one for non-domestic violence related, Coral Springs, Davie, Hollandale, and Pembroke. And so
BSO's not on that list.
so BSO, the two, and they just to the top, BSO, they were for domestic
right.
Domestic violence.
Right.
So
I'd like to offer a friendly gift. If by the end of the year, between you and Major London, Colonel Holmes, if BSO has the fewest amount, I got a gift card for you. If Fort Lauderdale has the fewest amount, Major London, you get the gift card. So
challenge accepted.
all right. It is going to be the Dunkin' Donuts.
wow. Madam Chair, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yes.
Last month, something that we began at the Juvenile Assessment Center, which is just a small form that we ask law enforcement officers to actually for them to specify the reason they did not offer a civil citation for eligible youth. The way the statute was written, how it was operationalized, that if it was not provided by law enforcement, the department in turn would, peruse a report and determine eligibility, so on and so, or why, the reason why. And so we did not want to give law enforcement, didn't want to take away their opportunity to give us their reason for not offering it. And so we started that last month, had just a little bit of pushback, but the officers did complete it. And we've been doing some intense data scrubbing behind the scenes to make sure those reasons are correct. So when we get to those agencies who have truly chosen not to use the program in place, our data should be relatively clean and ready to present.
All right. Do you have a target date that we could get that information? Because you had one officer, I think the month before, just said, because I could. Why did you arrest a kid? Because I could. Or why didn't you issue a citation? Because I didn't want to. That type of callousness and arrogance will not rule the day for violating the statute. Even though the statute doesn't have a lot of penalties, there are some things that I've been thinking of and researching to make folks do what they're supposed to do, what they're tasked, because the oath is to protect and defend and to follow the law, uphold the Constitution and the laws and the statutes of the state of Florida. That's in everybody's oath. So if they're not following that oath, So I'm thinking of some remedies for that. But if if it's domestic, I understand that. But that begs the question. Most of these domestic arrests, and the kid goes and Judge Williams and Judge Robolo has to see this kid, and then their brother or sister doesn't want to press charges, their mother doesn't want to press charges, and they're sitting somewhere for 21 days. If the officer would just put in the probable cause affidavit what it truly was, brothers were fighting. Because if the truth be told, I would have had a juvenile record. My sister and I, we fought and broke up furniture and my mama's lamps, but my mother committed child abuse when she got home. So, these things happen. I'm not minimizing, but I just want to make sure that we're not arresting children anymore and putting them in. And even though it was clean the day I went to Jack, I don't know if it's clean today, I got to go back. So if we could get that information, did your department have a due date or a tally date that they wanted it? Will we have it by the end of the year, by every quarter, something like that?
We that data is reported regularly by the department and is pulled. I will see when it will be available. We typically complete data sets at the end of the fiscal year, right? And because we're just coming through legislative session, so we are kind of on the tail end of that. But I will I'll see when we have another updated report to share.
Are you July 1, the start of your fiscal year, your next fiscal?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right. All right, so hopefully we can get that. I'm going to hold off on the update on the juvenile justice bill. I already told you about Senate Bill 802, which is the law for enforcement of I don't know how, the DOE is going to send folk down here to enforce the law when we got law enforcement down here. So that's why I want to point out some key things about that. Have they contacted BSO, Colonel Holmes, regarding that?
I haven't heard anything yet specifically about us being contacted as it refers to that.
Okay, what about Major London? Would they have contacted you for Fort Lauderdale? To say that they're going to send their enforcement people down here?
Yeah, same answer. I haven't heard of any such contact communication.
Senator Osgood, have they called to say when they coming to pick you up?
No, but I'm looking for them because I'm known for violating their laws.
All right. Are there any quarantines in the Broward County Jail? I got 9 minutes, and then
Okay.
Mr. Walters is going to get me.
Okay, I'll be quick. Before I go through that, I just want to go back just a quick second. One of the reasons why we've been successful with the missed opportunities is because we make sure that we hold our captains accountable. They make sure they hold the lieutenants accountable, and they make sure they hold the sergeants accountable. So we stay on top of that, and that's why we've been pretty successful with that. As I go into the COVID-19 cases, there are a total of 10 juveniles in our detention center. We have 0 COVID-19 cases. In our adult jails, there is 1 case. We have a total of 3,353 inmates, but only 1 case. So that's pretty good. In reference, going back to a juvenile detention center, we have of the 10 juveniles, we have 2 of them that have completed all high school courses. So that's a good thing. And all of our juveniles are receiving mental health and medical services.
Mr. Watkins, are they being educated? Teachers in there, you tell me what's going on.
Yes, so instruction is taking place in the portables of the facility. So the teachers are there, the kids are coming out and participating in education.
All right, now I know Chair Ellison asked about wearing the mask, and we do know that they're optional. So is that still the case that whoever wants to wear a mask can?
That is correct. Some are and some are not.
Okay. All right. And that includes your teachers, right?
That's correct.
As well as the students?
Yes, yes. And the teachers are wearing their masks for the most part. But the students, some do, but some don't.
Okay. All right. And what about Fort Lauderdale? Since you're up and operational, you all housing your juveniles in the Fort Lauderdale jail?
We don't house anybody at our facilities.
So you like intake, and then you take
Right,
them
it's
to
a,
the county?
it's a booking and transport operation.
Okay.
And they don't process any juveniles at the facility.
Okay. He keeps letting you know, Colonel Holmes, they don't process juveniles. His stopgap is working. So I went out and bought the gift card. So it's a good denomination. You're gonna get more than 2 or 3 cups of coffee on this one.
Still early.
All right, Mr. Weeks, can your legislative update hold until the next meeting, or do you want to address us on anything legislative?
No, ma'am, we can hold.
Okay, Chief Evans, you gave us a little bit about the updates about us getting to know the missed opportunities and the reasons, and that's important, the incorporation of the reasons. Anything else that we need to know?
What I'll just quickly add is for the month of April, we processed 159 youth through the Juvenile Assessment Center. As of this date, we have 124 youth identified as either being serious, violent, and or chronic. That information, as of last month, I began to share a very customized data set with both the state attorney and the public defender's office to help us better serve those young people who are rising to the level of concern with but their behavior that also includes youth who are identified as prolific juvenile offenders by the department and not so ordered by the judges here in Broward County, but it's just identification purposes. And as of 2:37 this afternoon, there were 49 youth in the juvenile detention facility, 43 of them being boys and 6 of them being girls.
Can you give me a breakup of Black, white, Hispanic, and you have those demographics?
I don't have them pulled down, but I can certainly email you the demographics.
Okay, that would be excellent, because I need to know the demographics of who we're holding.
Okay.
Last but not least, Ms. Phillips, the Zero Tolerance Committee. Are you representing DJJ on that? Who's on the Zero Tolerance Committee for DJJ?
Yeah, I'm not on the Zero Tolerance Committee.
Does it say DJJ, DMC? All right, well, I'll ask you this, Judge Williams, how's the new facility coming along? Did you get any money to build that new facility, you and Mr. Weeks?
Mr. Weeks and I both separately spoke with the secretary, and I'm going to be very blunt. And I even invited the chief judge to join me. At our next meeting, Mr. Weeks, the secretary is going to personally be there. I got that commitment from him, and I told him point blank, I need a yes or no. Are you in or are you out? I mean, I don't have time to play games. My life's too short. So he advised me that he would definitely be there. And I think his assistant was Miss Preston, I think might have been there. I'm trying to recall the names. Cassandra was there, Miss Evans. So I'm waiting on the next meeting to build this new facility, and he's assured us he will be there. My problem, Madam Judge Holmes, is that I don't want to say they change secretaries like I change t-shirts and underwear. But let me suggest to you, if I can just lock in the same person, I can move forward, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, they change up on you. Mr. Weeks, anything to add on that one?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm going to call an executive meeting for the detention center group because we need to start planning on strategizing. We have some ideas. I've been talking to Ms. Phillips on a legislative plan. We tried to push it this year in Tallahassee. The state attorney was also supportive of that in Tallahassee. Got it further than we've gotten in the past, but there's still a little bit further has to go. And we have some thoughts on how to get that done this year. But we need to move quickly because we need to start cracking before June. So I'll probably call that in the next week or two, and that'll be an executive team on that committee just to strategize moving forward.
Can you include the senator in that?
Yes, I will.
Because people file bills in Tallahassee to get money and stuff.
And that's the strategy. That is we've learned a few things by going to Tallahassee and being advised on how to move some stuff around. I'm still a novice though. I'm still trying to figure out how to get this stuff done. But we learned a few things.
Right, and Pastor Reverend Geis, anything on the faith-based side that I know you're praying for us, so that helps.
Always pray, but I have 2 brief announcements.
Yes, sir.
But first, I want to advise the CAB that the Broward Faith Community Network is reestablishing its presence in Broward County. And we meet the 4th Wednesday of every month from 10 to 11. We also ask
10 to 11 a.m. Okay.
And we're also asking you to save the date for the Know Your Rights workshop to be held on 6/14. This is a collaboration with SAU. It's the state attorney's office. Now, Ms. Evans, do you know the time? I don't have the time on that workshop.
Right now, we're looking for it to be from 1 to 4, but we're still looking at a venue. So it may be a little bit later in the afternoon, where our hope is to be able to afford the opportunity to parents, but this is going to be one in a series. So hopefully we'll be able to have some evening ones. And we are targeting the city of, we have selected the city of Coconut Creek to host the first one in, to hope that to garner some momentum behind our efforts to be smarter on crime than just the status quo we've done in this county.
All right, and 1 minute, Mr. Weeks, what's happening on June 23rd?
On June 23rd, we will be hosting for this community a re-entering citizens workshop for ex-felons. That will be hosted at the Lauderhill Performing Arts Center in collaboration and support from a number of community partners, including the City of Lauderhill, the NAACP, the Broward Sheriff's Office, State Attorney's Office, the clerk, the supervisor election, and so on and so on. And we hope that you all send that information out. But I heard about that, Know Your Rights. I think the Public Defender's Office in the past was invited to participate in those, Chair. If you could extend that invitation to Mr. James, I'm sure he would be a good partner to tell these young folks about the rights that they need to be protecting.
Top of the VIP list.
All right, there is 40 seconds left. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Judge Holmes, if you would let me make a quick comment that I think.
Can you do it in 20 seconds?
I can.
Okay.
I want to say publicly that I was very pleased with Sheriff Tony's leadership yesterday in the county commission in addressing the 911 issue. If you have not seen the video, go look at the video. His leadership was stellar in addressing and getting the resources that he needed for his staff to address that issue.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I put the data in the chat box for you.
I got it. I'm still concerned. There's 106 Black youth in detention. We're going to talk about that. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Judge Holmes, I just want to say one thing. Miss Dr. Osgood, I was at the sheriff's office back in 1993, and we was fighting over the communication system 30 years ago.
All right. We are now adjourned.
Thank you.
It is 5 o'clock. Thank you all.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
Mhm.
Oh.